everyone. I'm Carlota Pico from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here today with Elena Romera, who is Papa John's International Marketing Manager for the EMENA region and has over 16 years of experience in marketing and communications. Welcome, Elena, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Content Mix.
Thank you so much, Carlota, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
The pleasure is ours. Not only are you Spanish like myself, but you're also behind one of the world's biggest pizza brands, which I particularly love.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. It's good to hear we've got consumers that love the brand.
Yes, definitely. Well, I'm a client of yours. So, Elena, let's jump straight into the interview. To get this interview started off, I'd like to learn a little bit about your background, a bit about your company, and also how you got into your current role.
Yeah, so I'm an international communication marketing professional, and my background is a little bit mixed, and it combines languages, communication, and culture. So I studied media studies in the University of Seville, and also did a degree in translation and interpreting in the Pablo Lavide University in Seville as well. And I continue my education with a master's degree in intercultural communication in the University of Sheffield. So since 2004, I've been working for international organizations that had a global presence. So that required professionals that had a capability to communicate in different languages. So I speak Spanish, I speak English and Italian. So that's opened me many, many doors in the communication and marketing world. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done multilingual content management. I've done translation. I've done localization. I've managed global campaigns. I have created content for different cultures in general. So, and that's what I've been doing for many, many years. So everything I've done throughout my career has taken me a little bit farther in the content ladder. So currently, for example, I work as an international marketing manager for Papa John's, which is a global pizza brand that works across 45 markets, and they've got a important presence all over the world, and they require the internationalization of the brand to be able to grow. It's a brand that is in constant growth. But previously, I worked in the retail sector as well, and I was working as a multilingual content manager for Argos, which is a very popular British retailer. And I was key in the internationalization of the website in Spain. So everything I did in that job got me into my current role. So I think if I look back, what I can say is that everything I've done had a purpose, and that everything has fit so far. And that's how I got into my current position. My next step is going to be to be an independent communication professional, and continue working across languages and cultures.
Well, you are actually touching upon my next question. I was going to ask you about your next steps after Papa John's, since I was under the understanding that you will be leaving soon to venture into the world of entrepreneurship. So after 16 years of experience managing international campaigns in both the retail sector, like you mentioned, now Argos, and the food industry through Papa John's and other initiatives, why leave now the comfort of working for a multinational company to venture into the world of entrepreneurship, which as a former entrepreneur can be sometimes uncertain and also lonely?
Yeah, and I agree with your point, because it's a difficult time maybe to take the leap, because it's a leap of faith what I'm doing. But I believe that now I've got experience and I've got the baggage to be able to start my career and do it solo. And I like the diversity of working with different brands and without having to commit to just one. So it's a difficult decision to make, but I think I feel now I've got the experience to be able to do so.
Okay, well, from the Content Mix, we wish you the best of luck. I'm sure the
Thank
best
you.
is yet to come, and that many brands will jump on board with the very different communication services that you are able to offer to them, because you've not only helped brands internationalize their website, but have also led promotional campaigns worldwide. Like you mentioned, you're fluent in English, Spanish, and Italian, and you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to cultural adaptation as well, which is key in terms of being able to launch new products overseas to different markets. I do want to dive further into your experience at Argo. You led the internationalization of their e-commerce website. And for that reason, I'd like to ask you about the first step that a brand should take to internationalize their websites.
Well, I think there are lots of things to take into consideration when a brand decides to internationalize itself. So if it's just a website, it's one thing. If you just want to build a presence, a physical presence in a different market, that's a different story. But when it comes to a website, you have to test the water and do like proper research to understand what is the market, or what are the markets that your brand is going to be present, and are you going to do you have the consumers in the market that will be interested in what you are selling? So there is a lot of background work that goes behind that decision. So it's not just, okay, let's just go to Spain and let's just internationalize our website in Spain. Why is it that you're doing it? So in the particular case of Argos, for example, they did like a very thorough research. And as you know, the British expat community is quite broad across different European markets. So they analyzed, and they came to the conclusion that Spain was the biggest market in terms of British expats. And British people, they love their brands. Argos has been an institution in the UK for over 40 years. So they've got a reputation. So it's like when you go in Spain, and people say El Corte Inglés, everyone knows who El Corte Inglés is. So they don't really need to do any advertising. So when you've got a British expat community of over 1 million of people in a country, why not selling your brand there? Why not, internationalizing your website? And that's how everything started. And obviously, there were lots of steps that needed to follow to be able to fulfill the operations. But obviously, the very first step is, do your proper, market research to understand where your consumers are, so that you can succeed in that internationalization.
That's extremely interesting. So in Argo's case, for example, what they did was leverage on their existing community in order to launch their services to a new market that already had knowledge about their brand, in this
Correct.
case, Spain. That's a very good tip. Elena, what about consumers in Spain who didn't know about Argos? What did you do in order to attract their attention to the brand?
So that's a very interesting question, because in the particular case of the internationalization of Argos, there were two separate types of audiences. So we had the British expats, but we also had the Spanish nationals who knew nothing about the brand. So why would you buy in a brand that is, completely new to you? What is it you value? What is it that you're offering them? So a lot of work going into selling the brand to Spanish nationals, and the majority of the work was done online to be able to drag traffic to that website. So obviously, without having a physical presence, which was the case of this brand, it was all done, in the digital world. It was all online, because when you've got the opportunity to build a store that people pass by and they see it, and suddenly the brand has a physical presence. But when everything is online, it's way more difficult. So in this case, all the efforts were in doing lots of PPC campaigns, trying to attract and drive as much traffic as possible to that website.
So paid advertisement was basically what you were focusing on in order to attract a new community to your brand?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of challenges, what challenges could brands face when it comes to internationalization? So what can a brand plan for in advance?
Well, I think there is a lot to plan. Everything has to be carefully planned. So besides market research, and when you understand what market you are going into, you need to understand how, consumers' behavior of that particular market. So when you are talking, for example, when it comes to the hospitality sector, you need to understand what are the tastes of those consumers, what people like, so that you can offer a menu that suits the needs of those consumers. So in the case of the brand that I'm working now, which is a global pizza brand, every time it goes into a new market, a lot of work is put into putting together a new menu that suits the interests of those consumers. Because as you may understand, in the Middle East, they've got different tastes, and they eat differently than what we are eating, for example, in Spain. And it's quite funny how different products become bestsellers in different markets, depending on the interest of the audience. So you may have a country where suddenly the pineapple pizza, it's a hit, and another one in which they will never sell pineapple pizza because just consumers are not used to that taste.
Elena, for our audience who's watching our interview now on YouTube, I'm sure they saw the smile come across my face when you started talking about the food industry, because I've also experienced very similar activity during my travels, for example, in the GCC. When it comes to McDonald's, just to talk about a world name brand, well, they're not able to sell pork in the GCC, but they are able to sell pork, for example, in Southern Europe, because of different cultural reasons. So culture plays a huge role when it comes to promoting and also deciding on the menu of a food company.
Precisely, is what you were saying. So, if you have, for example, a product that is meat based, and pork won't work in that particular culture, you will have to replace it with turkey or another similar type of meat, that lamb, for example, then it may be more suitable for that audience. So that's what I find fascinating about food brands across the world, that exceptionally they sell the same thing across the world, because there is nothing such as a global product. It's very difficult to create a product that works across the board. So you will always have to localize it, customize it, depending on the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. What about when you don't know what the local consumer wants? Then what do? Do you rely on local agencies in order to help you navigate the nuances of that market in particular?
Well, you have to, I think the competition plays a very important role there. So you have to understand what the competition is doing, because if the competition is doing something, it's because it's working and it's effective. So I think you need to rely on, you need to understand what the competition is doing, but you need to do proper research through local agencies, so that they give you some hints about what is working and what is not working. So you always have to rely on data. There is always data in one way or another, because nothing that you will do will be so innovative. So if you're opening a food brand, there will always be a competitor, and you will always have to visit those competitors, understand what is it that they are doing, and if you can do something similar or you can adapt it. And there is always like a trial and error. So there will be a bunch of products that you will be able to launch and will work across the board, but you will have to localize the rest.
Okay. What about costs? I'm sure there are plenty of small and medium enterprises right now that are listening into our interview and are thinking about, wow, that must be really expensive to launch a new product in a new market. What are some tips for those SMEs on a low budget? What can they do in order to keep costs down?
Well, I think that's a difficult question because it really depends on the market. So I think you have to work with local suppliers to be able to minimize the cost. And a lot of work goes into what supply chain does behind the curtains. So they have to do a lot of effort to try to minimize the cost. There is a lot of negotiation behind. So you have to speak to a lot of suppliers, and you have to do a lot of work. to try to keep the cost to the minimum. And if it doesn't, if you do your numbers and if it doesn't work, then you won't be able to launch the product. You may be able to launch that product across X amount of markets, which that is cost effective. But if it's not cost effective, you won't be able to launch it.
In terms of marketing, how would you suggest that companies announce new products or new services to local markets? What channels can they use in order to make these announcements?
Well, I think, first of all, it depends on the budget that you have, of course, because obviously if you've got a big budget, you have the opportunity to do like a proper launch and, maybe go on TV. But if you have a small budget and you want to be on the safe side, I always suggest to use the digital channels. So I think it's very important, no matter where you go, to build an online presence through a website and through social media, and start creating content that is relevant to that audience. But if possible, always try to invest in digital marketing, because organic content is limited. So consumers will only see a small percentage of what you post. Bearing in mind how algorithms works in social media such as Facebook or Instagram, your audience will only see a limited amount of content, and that's why digital marketing is so important. And you have to invest to be able to reach and to be able to reach a wider audience, and to be able to personalize that content and try to reach the audience that you are particularly interested in.
Okay. You are leaning into my next question, which will be about coronavirus. The economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic are far-reaching, and actually advertising and marketing budgets have been very strongly hit. What do you think the future of marketing will look like?
Well, I think obviously I don't have the ability to foresee what's happening in the future, but I want to think that this is a temporary situation, that obviously we will come out of it stronger, and that we will go back to the point that we were before, or even stronger. But what I want to think is that although the coronavirus has hit the marketing budgets of some organizations, it doesn't apply to all sectors. So I think the hospitality sector, more specifically the food delivery industry, has seen an important opportunity here, because the way that we consume has completely changed. Mm-hmm. We've seen in the hospitality sector, for example, we've seen the local businesses that had no, online presence at all, and that they were used to deal with their consumers just face to face. That suddenly, overnight, they had to build an online presence, had an e-commerce website, and launch different social media channels to be able to reach their consumers. So I think it's a big opportunity as well. To change and to innovate. And for those, big players in the hospitality sector, it's been a great opportunity as well to reach consumers that they weren't reaching before, because they were not at home, because they were busy, and because there was so much, digital noise that they weren't listening to them. So I want to think that we will come out of this stronger. And once, this situation passes, those brands who have continue working on their marketing strategy and haven't completely abandoned it, and haven't abandoned their marketing budgets, they will be stronger after this situation.
Well, I hope so as well. I mean, marketing is basically the voice of a company, and without a voice, you don't have a company either. In the same line that without money, you don't have a company, but marketing normally generates sales, so it goes hand in hand with the backbone of all businesses worldwide.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay, what about the food tech industry? I do want to pick your brain on that, because obviously you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the food industry and marketing. What do you think the future of the food tech industry will look like in terms of new trends coming out of this pandemic?
Well, who knows what's coming, because we are certainly facing the unknown. It's all so new that, we are constantly changing. But what it's obvious is that, the online world is the present and it's also the future. And we are going to be more time online, and we are going to be relying on our mobile phones. So I think the future is, the e-commerce will continue growing. The apps will be, they are a must these days, and that's where we are going. And I can't really foresee anything else because, we don't know what's coming. But I think that it's all about personalizing the service to the consumers, and making more special, more targeted. That's where we are going.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of apps these days, especially during Corona times. I've been on food apps nonstop, just ordering different plates to my home on a daily basis. And I don't know how I would have survived the pandemic without apps like Just to Eat, for example. Okay.
Precisely. So I think the aggregators they have experience that they've been on rise during the coronavirus. So Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats. So all of them. And a lot of local businesses have suddenly gone, into aggregators to be able to deliver their services.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I mean, local businesses do not only have to develop a website, but they can also join platforms that already have that community built and that already have the experience built into their apps in order to promote their different dishes to the local community. So it's not only necessary. Well, a restaurant can either develop a website, of course, which is very pricey and also time consuming, or they can join the wave of digital apps that already have local communities in order to promote their services to a wider audience. So that's one way of.
I want to think that it's not one or the other. Sometimes it's two of them at the same time, because if you think about what is it to reach an audience, you have to try everything. If you're a brand that is not so known, how are you going to reach more people? Well, you have to join forces and partner up with aggregators, and that's what lots of brands do. To start with, when they internationalize, so they assess the situation of the market, and if aggregators are popular, they have to be there because that's where the audience is. Right. So sometimes it's not one or the other. Sometimes they go hand in hand and go together, because your purpose is always to reach as many people as possible.
That's a really good point. Yeah, definitely. I was also referring to the small business owners who perhaps don't have the budget to promote themselves as heavy online than other larger brands have.
Yeah, absolutely. For local businesses, aggregators has been a lifesaver in terms of the coronavirus pandemic, because they've been able to reach consumers more easily.
Yeah.
But as I said, if you have the budget and you've got the opportunity to develop your own app, and that's always a must. And when you internationalize your brand, but both go hand in hand together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when it comes to content, HubSpot's CEO said the following: what separates good content from great content is a willingness to take risks and push the envelope. Because of your experience in promotional campaigns, I want to ask you what separates good promotional campaigns from fantastic promotional campaigns.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think to be able to, I think anyone can do good content, because there is a lot of good content out there. I think the difference between good content and excellent content is how much data you've got, and to be able to rely on and to make informed decisions before creating that content. So to respond to your question, I would say data is everything. Data is what is going to help you to excel and to be able to reach your consumers in the way that they expect. So that would be my answer to the question.
Okay, thank you. We are moving into our set of rapid fire questions, which are basically your recommendations to our audience. To get this section started off, I'm going to ask you about your source of inspiration. It can be an influencer, for example, or a role model.
Well, I think in the content marketing world, there are a lot of influencers. I follow a guy called John W. Hayes, and he's very good in content marketing. I had the opportunity to meet him in a workshop, and he has a blog at medium.com. And he publishes about email marketing, blogging, and he's very insightful and very, very inspiring.
Okay, thank you. What about an event or a hashtag that you'd like to recommend?
Well, I think if for an event, I can recommend in the e-commerce and particularly in the web design world, there is a Smashing conference. There is a magazine called Smashing Magazine, and they do this Smashing conference in different parts of the world, in Europe and also outside of Europe. And they talk about different trends in web design, which I find really helpful, to continue and keep abreast with what's going on out there.
Okay. And last but not least, what about your favorite book at the moment?
My favorite book, my favorite book at the moment is not work related, because when it comes to work, I tend to read more online. But my favorite book at the moment is called Invisible Women. It's called Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. And it's from an author called Caroline Criado Perez. Ironically, it's been the bestseller during lockdown in the UK. And what I find interesting about this book is for me, it's a jewel in the feminist literature. And I find it really interesting, although it's very infuriating sometimes, but it can actually help you explain, why women are still at disadvantage. But it's really interesting.
Okay, lovely. Well, Elena, thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix. It's been an absolute
Thank
pleasure
you.
to talk with you and to learn about your experience.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here, and all the best for the Content Mix.
It's our pleasure, and all the best as well to you and your future endeavors. Okay, and to
Thank
everyone
you.
listening in today, thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix. For more perspectives about the content marketing industry in Europe, check out the Content Mix. We'll be releasing interviews just like this one every week, so keep on tuning in and see you next time. Bye.